Well, what's going on, man? Hugh Halter here, and I've got a couple, before we get started, a couple man thoughts just to give you. Every once in a while, we'll sprinkle these in, but you'll probably notice, and you're probably saying to yourself, man, that's a nice hat, Halter. Yes, it is. A few weeks ago, I was down in Texas, and one of my things is I love hat stores. As you can see, there's not a lot going up on top of the old sprout here, so I like to cover it up. And I went into this specialized man's hat store, and down in Texas, these are called, just so you know, this is called an LBJ cattleman's hat, better known as an open range hat. This, of course, was worn by our late president, LBJ. And it's got the classic double crested lines at the top. So I don't know if you're like me and you're beginning to lose a little hair up there, get yourself a little LBJ. A little costly, but sometimes the best things in life are those few moments, few times where you take care of yourself. So the second man tip I'd like to give you is related to meat. I know many of you are avid grillers, barbecuers, and probably mostly into beef. But if you angle into pork every once in a while, the last couple of years, the word out on the streets is that you can eat pork rare. Like, you don't have to overcook or even cook it to 165 degrees. You can eat it at like 140. And last night I went out with my wife, a couple other people, and a friend put on these massively thick pork steaks. And we were talking about that because they came off a little rare. And he's like, yeah, I don't know if you've heard. I said, oh, yeah, I've heard. So let's go for it. So I ate about an 18-ounce, inch and a half thick pork steak, probably cooked at 135, 140. And I've been throwing up all day. So if any of you are thinking about trying that, I'd stick with the old traditional 165. So anyway, a little hat wisdom, a little meat wisdom. We are now into chapter 2 of the great New Testament wisdom book of James. And I just want to kind of share, this will not surprise you at all, but I know some of you think I'm an intellectual or something. I'm not. You can tell I'm not diving real deep. I'm just like trying to get at some practical issues because I'm a practical dude. Case in point, I did 2 years of seminary in my MDiv program, but I had to leave, and so I never finished my MDiv. I'm actually an unlearned man. I had to leave mostly because my son's epilepsy, and I needed to work a job to pay for that, but I thought someday I'd get back and finish that, but I never did. And so a lot of my friends that are in the theology world, the missiology, they often say Halter's the unlearned one among us. So it's been quite a badge of honor. Another thing you should probably know, I have a hard time reading books. If you don't like to read, you felt some guilt over that, I'm just like you. I've never liked reading. My dad used to pay me a penny a page just to get me to read, and then I ended up writing a lot of books. I wrote 8 books. Another joke out there amidst the sort of the people that do writing and speaking, people joke about my books because there's no footnotes in them, maybe 1 or 2 per book. And that's because I don't read. I literally do not have the energy or the time to read. Back in the day when my son was with us, if I stopped to read, I would immediately fall asleep because I was only getting about an hour of sleep a night. So yeah, I'm not considered an intellectual. And I remember being at an international roundtable for apostolic leaders. This was in London. They flew us out. It was a big deal. All these uber intellectual apostolic types, as they called us. And during one of the presentations, everybody was going around, saying how many PhDs they had and MAs and blah, 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 blah. And I went, yeah, guys, I ain't got a whole lot. I'm a house painter, and you're probably even wondering why I'm here. And then another fella stood up who knew me very well And he said, hey, before Halter belittles himself, he said, I just want you to know, and it totally blessed me, but he said, the one thing about Halter, and probably why he got invited to this, is that he actually does this stuff. And he said, even at his old age, he still actually is living this faith out. And so it ended up kind of, I don't know, there's a line of intellectuals that came up to just talk to me about how we were living it out. And I learned early on, or maybe not early on, but it was probably 10 years ago, I just learned the power of being somebody that does, what we talk about. And so James, we're in that passage where he's going through this idea of faith without works and what that means. So I'm just going to read. It says, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if somebody claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such a faith save him? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food, and one of you walks up to him and says, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs. What good is it, he says, or he asks. In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. But some of you will say, you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I'll show you my faith by my deeds. You believe there is one God? Well, yippee-doo-dah, good for you. Even the demons believe that and shudder. Then he says, you foolish person. Again, this is wisdom literature, so whenever you're not taking the wise approach to this, oftentimes they'll just go, well, you're a fool. So you foolish person, do you want evidence that faith without deeds is useless? Was not our father Abraham considered righteous for what he did when he offered his son Isaac at the altar? You see that his faith and his actions were working together, and his faith was made complete by what he did. And the scripture was fulfilled that says, Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. And he was called God's friend. You see, a person is considered righteous by what they do, and not by faith alone. In the same way, was not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous? This is a great scripture. Was not even the prostitute Rahab considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in different directions? As the body without spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. And so what an incredible passage. When you go through this, you are hitting one of the great paradoxes in Scripture. And a paradox, if you know what a paradox is, if you read books, you would know what this is. For us uncivilized, unlearned men, a paradox is when you have two things that appear to be in contradiction to each other, but in the end of the day, they're actually both true. And so this faith without deeds thing, and that was at the center of a Jewish mindset, because again, put yourself in that frame of mind. Everything was based on adhering to the law. So you would say that maybe their pendulum swung to the deeds or the works things. The Pharisees, the one that Jesus had the most trouble with, remember, these were the chaps that did all the works. And they were the most evangelistic, they were the most fervent, they gave money to the poor, they traveled over land and sea to try to make one convert. I mean, these cats were into the works. And yet Jesus would go, nah, you're missing the whole point. And then other times, he'll say right here, like your faith without works is useless or dead. So which one is it? Clearly, they're both true, right? And the New Testament is written at about the second grade level, so even a second grader can go, no, those are both true. So what's going on there? We have, even think about the Reformation. Reformation was literally about this one issue, is you had those that were growing up in a Catholic setting, very much what we call a works-based ideology. So you work with the poor and you give money to the church and blah, blah, blah. And it's very, very heavy. And if you don't do the works, oftentimes you're even condemned to hell and that type of thing. And all of a sudden, Martin Luther, who was a priest in the Catholic Church, is reading Romans, and he goes, what, time out? And so he comes up with this phrase, sola fide. So you're saved by grace alone through faith, right? And that's what the great scriptures of the New Testament, they all say, like, you can't earn your salvation. So what's the point? Then why even do works? And so here's maybe a couple points to think about today. That works if we're doing works to attain favor, then we're missing the truth of what that means. What Jesus did for us on the cross made us favorable. That's an easy way to say that. And so if we do things hoping that by doing good works that God will go, well, I like you a little bit better, so you're going to be okay, we're missing the point. Remember, when he does his work on the cross, he's not doing that with any particular face in mind. He's doing that for all of humanity. Okay? And so that's not it. But what if work was something that you did, or the works that you did were because you were favored? So let me say it again. It's not right to think that you work to gain God's favor. You already have his favor through Jesus Christ. You're favorable to him, right? So all of you guys, you just need to hear that. Wherever you're sitting listening to this, whether or not you've done any works for God, whether or not you would put yourself in the category of a prostitute, it does not matter, okay? What Jesus did on the cross has made you to be in favor with God. He loves you, right? But what if, because of that favor, we would begin to live out a more natural sense of works? How does that paradox work? Well, imagine that you grew up and you had a physically and verbally abusive father. And let's say every day he's making you literally move the wood pile from point A to point B just because he wants to abuse you. And the next day he says, son, I want you to move it back to where you moved it from yesterday. And you go, Dad, what do you, and then all of a sudden you get a backhand. And so you grow up learning that I need to do works for my dad or else he's going to beat me. And imagine that this young boy, maybe the age of 12, his father is suddenly killed in an accident. And so he's without a dad. And several years later, his mom remarries, and she marries just a beautiful man, very gentle, very kind. He only speaks words of encouragement to you, and never would even consider you. You'd never have a moment of fear thinking about him physically abusing you or raising a hand against you. And imagine that all of a sudden you found yourself moving the woodpile from point A to point B, and then asking him if he needed anything else done, and he'd give you a few more chores, and you found yourself wanting to do these works for your dad, your new dad, because of his kindness. That's really where the paradox ends, is that there is nothing that you can do to earn God's favor. You don't have to do anything to please him. You just can't. So this unmerited favor or grace, sola fide, by faith alone, you are made right with Jesus. Because of really the faithfulness of Jesus, you're made right with God. But then after that, after we've put our faith in him, we believe in him just like the demons do. We do things that demons don't, and that is that we serve him, and we wake up in the morning and we invite him to kind of be involved in our day. And when he presents things to us that we can respond to, we do. Demons don't. They believe in God. A lot of church attenders, they believe in God just like the demons. But faithful men, those that combine faith and works, are those that they may not even know everything. Maybe you don't read stuff. Maybe you're not intellectual, but when something happens at 2:31 at the office where something's presented for you to do something related to the work of God in the world, you respond to it. And all of a sudden you start to see that now there's men of great faith and grace are also men of great works, because they love to do it. It's actually out of an abundance and an overflow. And that would maybe change things a little bit. I just wrote down here, what makes a Christian man is not that we do not struggle. What makes a Christian man is that we keep fighting, we keep going. Many men that believe in God do nothing for him. It's a sort of a life insurance policy, and they live their lives as if there is no God. They're essentially functional or practical atheists or agnostics. Maybe there's something up there, but it's not worth adjusting my life for. A faithful man, though, on the other side, is one that goes, no, I believe this, I have a belief system, and it will change. It'll change what I do with my money and what I do with my time and how I parent my children and how I am a spouse to my wife. and how I'm going to be loyal to my brothers, and on and on and on. Those are the works that he's saying, bring your faith alive. And if you don't have those things going on, sorry, it's a little bit of the pork still working its way up. If you don't have any of those things going on, if you go at the end of 10 years, I have the same belief system I've always had, then the Lord would say, yeah, it's useless, it's dead. It doesn't mean that it's not unto salvation. It's just saying it's kind of doing nobody any good, including yourself. And so if you hear that kind of rebuke and you go, okay, fine, I'm going to go do stuff, remember, don't do it to gain his favor. Works that are beautiful are the works that are done that you really want to do. That if my wife gives me the honey-do list and every morning goes, have you got to the list yet? Have you got to the list? I have found that does happen in my life, and I get to where I don't want to do any of them just because she's been on my backside. And then every once in a while she'll go off on a trip like she did a few weekends ago with some girls, and I think of things that I know she would love done, and I find that I delight in doing them if I know that I got to think of them first and I wasn't badgered into doing them. So maybe that paradox helps out today. Yeah, I'll be praying for you that your days will get interrupted with little moments where you know that the Lord is going, yeah, this is a little work that I would love for you to do for me today. And it would mean a lot to these people too, and you'll just have a delight to do it. So press on, boys. We are working our way through James. This is great stuff, and we will see you next week. See ya.